Georgia. I had made sure I kept my therapy sessions going just to check in and make sure I was doing everything mentally for myself. And when I found out is I wasn't keeping up the physical aspect of it. There'd be times I'd go, I'd run and be good
Sure.
running. There would be other times I would just say, you know what, as long as I'm focused, I'm good. And I found I was really yo-yoing. And if anybody who's been in the fitness industries who knows anything, like that's not a great way to physically stay fit or to physically
Right.
take care of your body. So it clicked in me one day, like right once we were trying to getting out of COVID, I said, why have someone that's helping me take care of my mental health, my mental fortitude, my mental strength? I was like, why don't I just do the same thing for my physical?
Sure.
And so I said, all right, we'll get a personal trainer. You never had one before, you don't know much about it. And I got one, and it totally changed my perspective on how I took care of myself.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stephenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our ongoing goal is to inspire our listeners to live their best audacious lives ever. We appreciate you taking time to join us today for a conversation that's all about prioritizing mental health and physical health, managing stress, and finding balance in life. Just like maintaining a balanced diet is crucial for a healthy body, balancing mental and physical health is essential for a fulfilling life. Our guest today will shed light on the importance of this balance and share valuable insights on how to navigate challenges that come with stress. Today, we are thrilled to have Mark Paisant as our guest. Mark is a mental health advocate and a fitness enthusiast who has a wealth of experience in bringing together mental and physical well-being. His expertise in coaching individuals on achieving a harmonious mind-body connection makes him the perfect fit for today's episode, and I'm certain that you'll walk away with some great insights. So without any further ado, let's check out our conversation with Mark. Enjoy. Hey, Mark, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you making the time to be here, my friend.
Oddly, this is my pleasure, totally my pleasure. I appreciate you making time for me, and I look forward to this conversation.
We were sort of engaged just before we went live here, just about how much of a blessing it is to kind of be a part of these sorts of dialogues, and I mean when I say it truly, truly is, and I will tell you there has never been a time where I don't walk away from a conversation going, "Oh wow," and I feel like I'm robbing and cheating and stealing from people because like this is supposed to be for others, and I'm getting all the benefits and rewards, and so really just thank you for being a part of this and helping me further my own personal mission, and that's really all I can say. Here on this podcast, we spend much time encouraging individuals to live their best, audacious life, and the pathway to get there, it is going to be very, very different. Mark, what you do and what others do they will not be the exact same. So the recognition that we're on our own individual journey, I think, is a starting point, and then that will sort of lay out the rest of the rest of the pathway, if you will. And part of that is recognizing our own individual journeys and challenges and what we need for ourselves, and things like the resiliency is a huge topic on this part of this conversation. And I know certainly as as a personal trainer and someone really focuses on having individuals strengthen not just their bodies but their minds, and nutrition is a big part of it. The mental health work is all parts of the component that you do. I think this is a great opportunity to have you sort of to bring you into this conversation. So maybe as a starting point, you can fill our listeners in a little bit about who you are and the work that you do, and what's gotten you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, and when I get people on the shows that I do now, a lot of times I'll say this is for me too. Like as much as I
Yeah.
want to give it to the audience and want to give
Yeah.
it to them, I'm like, listen,
Yep.
I'll be totally honest with you. I'm being selfish. Like I want a little bit of this also, but so
So the
you're
dead giveaway for me is when I say to you, "Hey, my friend," it's
yeah.
just my
Hey,
friend wants to know.
no judgment here. No judgment here. But like you said, there's a few things that I'm involved in, and just to kind of give a quick run through, my name is Mark Paisant, and I live right outside of it, Atlanta, Georgia, and I spend most of my like there's no day that looks the same for me. The only thing about my days are the same is that after 5 o'clock, usually I'm at the soccer field,
Okay.
whether it's for my girls' teams, the team I coach, or one-on-one private training sessions. Other than that, I have a 9 to 5, which is rarely ever a 9 to 5. I work in the insurance business, and I have for the last 20 years, and
Hmm.
and I love that. And a few years ago, right after COVID, I was kind of, going up and down in physical fitness, and I had been keeping up with my mental well-being. And this
Okay.
is something that I've documented very well. I from moving from the DC area back down to Georgia, I had made sure I kept my therapy sessions going just to check in and make sure I was doing everything mentally for myself. And what I found out is I wasn't keeping up the physical aspect of it. There'd be times I'd run and be good
Sure.
running. There would be other times I would just say, you know what, I as long as I'm mentally I'm focused, I'm good. And I found I was really yo-yoing. And if anybody who's been in the fitness industries or knows anything, like that's not a great way to physically stay fit or to physically
Right.
take care of your body. So it clicked in me one day, like right once we were trying to getting out of COVID, I said, why have someone that's helping me take care of my mental health, my mental fortitude, my mental strength? I was like, why don't I just do the same thing for my physical?
Sure.
And so I said, all right, we'll get a personal trainer. You never had one before, you don't know much about it. And I got one, and it totally changed my perspective on how I took care of myself.
Right.
And I started to combine the two, mental health and physical health, instead of just going to the gym to kind of zone out and be like, okay, forget about the job, forget about the family, forget about the stressors of life. I did just a small shift, and I said, you know what, I'm going to lean into all the stressors of my life. Like I'm going to think about them while I'm at the gym. And it totally changed my perspective, and I totally focused on the mind body connection. And of course,
Hmm.
with this, the person that I am, I cannot keep anything to myself. And this is a gift and a curse. It's really a gift and
Right.
a curse. Like I'm
Right.
not, and I said, well, I want to show others how to do this. Like
That's
I
right.
want to show others. And so immediately about 6 to 9 months after I started my physical, training journey or personal
Hmm.
training journey, I started to get licensed, and I
Okay.
started to learn more about the body, learn more about nutrition, learn more about, like, it's kind of funny for people who've gone through this. Like I've been in sports my whole career
Right.
or my whole life, and I said, "Oh, this is why this coach did this exercise with us.
That's
Like
right.
this
That's
is what
right.
it works on."
Right.
So, to kind of wrap it up really quickly, I just want to make sure people understand there's no days that look the same. Like some days I'm recording a show early, I record at lunchtime. Some days I'll get a text from a player that says, "Hey coach, can we go out and train today? Can we work on this?" And I'll take it on my lunch break. Some days I'll go to soccer right after 5 o'clock and come back and work. So my day is kind of filled with, I know what's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen, but
Sure.
it's going to
Sure.
happen, but everything is going to get done. So
I love it.
that's pretty much how that's what I'm doing now.
It certainly makes for some full days, I'd imagine. Like, one to the
Yes.
next.
Yes, it there are some very full days since, over when all the kids were out of school and
Yeah.
not in season. Like I used to have
Yep.
multiple people texting me throughout the weeks to say, "Hey, can we get this time, this time, this time?" And the good thing about it is I have a job and a leader that is very understanding and knows
Amazing.
of all the things that I do. And he's one of those guys like, listen, as long as you get your work done, I'm good with it.
Sure.
So yeah,
Sure.
it does help a lot.
That's great support. No, that's great.
Mhm.
I'm glad you made that point. It's a great, great support. I want to actually go back because you had talked about early on. Talked about you made it prior to keep up your mental health, right? Um, what was fueling that? Was it personal stuff happening, or what was making you go, no, no, mental health is priority? And the reason why I asked, first, I'm curious, one, but second is when you make that kind of a testament, right, and understand that this is important to me. First of all, it's not something that a lot of people do. A lot of people don't recognize it, but it seemed to be that you did. So I'm just sort of curious what prompted that.
Yeah, from the moment I can remember being a kid, I was always like emotional and always had feelings in mind. Was always a super empathetic person. Like I
Okay.
always and I always thought that was my detriment. I always thought that was.
Okay.
From the moment I was in college, I started my therapy journey because I felt out of place and I felt like something wasn't I wasn't doing something correctly.
Okay.
I wish I could put it in a better phrase, but I thought something was wrong because I got into college and I see all these very confident soccer players. I see all these alpha male, the quote unquote males,
Sure.
chest out, all this stuff, and I'm just like I feel out of place. Like I don't feel like this is me. I must be broken. Something must be wrong.
Mm,
And I remember going to a therapist when I was 19 and he's saying, "No, nothing's wrong with you. Like this is how you were built. You're a good person. Like let's walk through some of the things that you feel."
yes.
And so since that moment in my life, I have that goes back to the moment where I was very intentional about my mental health.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
physically, sports, I always had coaches. I always had people pushing me like, "Oh, you should do
Yes.
this, you should do that."
Yes.
Like I was never in charge of my physical health. I was always in season. I was
Yep.
always doing
Yep.
conditioning. I always had training. Like the moment I stopped playing sports when I was in my 20s, I can look back and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't
Yeah.
go to
Yeah.
a gym and tell you what to do. I couldn't
Right.
go for a run. And that's when I kind of, my weight went up and I started to kind of really feel poorly about my body. But again, in my mid 20s, I had some issues where I didn't feel in the right place. Head space was all wrong.
Hmm.
So again, I took the initiative with mental health, and you're not the first person to tell me that I kind of reversed it. Like most people will keep up with the physical health,
Sure.
and they just won't worry about. No, I won't say worry about. I'll say it never really crosses their mind to hey, this is a specific physical or specific mental opportunity that I have to work on myself. People don't
Hmm.
think like that a lot of times.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for me, I always like since the moment I was in my 20s, I said I'm going to make sure that I'm at least talking to somebody. I'm going to make sure that I have that backup plan where people know what I'm doing and people know how important mental health is to me. I want to make
Hmm.
sure the black community and black men know that if I'm talking about it, you can talk about it. You can talk to me about it.
Yep.
But I had to take that extra step when it came to me being responsible for my physical health.
Hmm. I mean, what I'm hearing is you're very much prioritizing yourself first. Like that's kind of what's ringing through loud and clear.
That is correct, and that's what I kind of I preach that to other people. And it's an interesting conversation sometimes when you have a lot of people out there who kind of are in the camp of I don't need to worry about myself. That's myself, which is weird to think about it. That'll take care of itself. But if I take care of others, then that'll and it's like, think about what you just said. Like, think about what you just said. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
Thinking about those conversations about prioritizing self,
Mhm.
um, like it's like as I'm thinking it through, right, Mark? As I'm thinking it through, it's like really, like you don't see yourself. You don't see yourself first. You don't see yourself as a priority before you can help others. Were those difficult conversations for you to get your head around?
It's probably a 25-year-old Mark. It would have been a
Hmm.
difficult conversation. But I mean, I just had one of my closest friends I've had this conversation with, and um, I remember him saying like, no, no, I was put on this earth to take care of my wife and my kids, and I'm not gonna, this is all gonna be given back to me. And it's like, bro, listen, I'm cool with, I'm not here to change your perspective or change how you think about things. Like I understand, but I was like, what do you do for yourself? How do you relax? How do you recharge your batteries?
Yes.
And it was a question that he really either hadn't been asked, which I'm dead. I'm sure he had been asked, or he hadn't asked himself.
Hmm.
And I don't think he had ever asked himself, or if he had, it had been one of those things where it's like that mental back and forth, where it's like,
Right.
I know I need to do this for myself, but listen, I have to do for others. I have to do for others. And it's like, okay, listen, I'm not telling you how to change anything or what, you know, religion has told you or things like that, because a lot of it came from
Yep.
religion with him.
Sure. Sure.
But I said, listen, I love you as a friend. I love you as a brother. Like I want you to know that this is what I've been through. I used to think the same way you thought.
Sure.
And me prioritizing myself doesn't mean I don't care about others. That means
That's
I'm putting the best form of myself out to others. I'm being the
yes.
best brother, husband, son, cousin,
Yes.
coworker, friend. I'm being the best version of those people when I take care of myself.
Mm. And I'd imagine, you think of mothers. Not mothers are notorious for putting their children first, and whether there's guilt, obligation, sense of responsibility, for whatever reason, mothers seem to put themselves way behind. Like they'll eat last, they'll sleep the less, they'll
Mm,
get up first, they'll do all these things to take care of others.
mm,
Um, but again, you think about like if you're trying to be the best parent, and although I say mothers, fathers too, don't get me wrong, but just historically, it's kind of
mm,
be mothers that do these things, But in order to be the best parent you possibly can be, you've got to be there for your kids 100%. And if it's not there, then if you're less than that, then you're not giving them the best. And so it's counterproductive at the end of the day.
It it really is. And if you're like me and you've had, your wife has had kids and you've been in that room and you've heard the doctor speak afterwards, they're very specific with the instructions they give the mother.
Mm.
You make sure you take care of yourself. You have to eat healthy if you want to produce milk for the kid.
Yep.
There's sleep when the child, you take care of your health, sleep when the child is sleeping, rest, make sure a lot of the things that are for the baby are given in multiple. And if for people who haven't had kids, like you're going to be the doctor every other day for 6 to 8 weeks, and then every week for you, like
Yes.
this is going to, so they're
Yes.
going to do. And I guarantee you, we had great doctors. One of the first things that they're going to come out of the doctor's mouth is, "How are we doing today, mom? How are we doing today, dad?"
Mm.
Because there is that baby, the child needs their mother, needs their father. It is, yes. Once my daughters came out, and I was like, oh man, okay, this is, I gotta take care. Like this is
Yeah.
what
You
just
go into
happened.
Papa Bear mode, right?
What changed in me? Like, but I was like, oh well, I still have to make sure that, I'm rested, that I'm eating, that I'm available, because when my wife needs to rest, like I need to be on my game. So it's very basic, and we kind of complicate things a little bit because we think we're supposed to give everything of ourselves. And what if there's nothing left to give? And it's like,
Mm.
oh, I understand. That makes sense.
Right, right. No, it does. It makes total sense, right?
Mhm.
You just gotta pay attention to
And there's
what you're
people
doing.
listening, right now who don't, they'll listen to us talk and be like, you know what? I understand what they're saying, but
Yeah,
I'm still going to do things the same. And listen,
right,
to each
right.
their own. You got to learn on your own. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, no, 100%, 100%. So the process of self care could be either what you do for yourself physically or mentally, right? It could
Mm,
be either or.
mm.
Um, how often should one sort of consider these in like are they uh, physical one day, mental one day, or mental the next, or what does what would you recommend if someone does?
That's such a good question. That's such a good question. And I think I'm like perfectly fit to answer this question because um I have gone through phases, like I told you already, where I've literally worked on one versus the other.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've kind of talked about my intentionality about my mental health and
Yes.
making sure I was taken care of. But there has been times in when I was really getting into my fitness journey where I wanted to get back in shape. I wanted to make sure I was taking care of my body where um in my head I had this grand idea that if I lost weight, if I got in shape, everything else would take care of itself. Everything
Naturally.
else,
Fall into
everything,
place. Yeah. Just fall into
yeah,
place.
yeah, follow, yeah. So I did a lot of running and I went to the gym and I wasn't really making time for any type of, self-care, any type of meditation, mindfulness exercise. I really wasn't going to any therapy sessions at that time. I
Mhm.
was kind of working, doing my fitness journey and coaching. That's if those three things were in my life, that's what I was doing. Boom,
Got
boom,
you.
boom, boom, boom. It ended up losing a good bit of weight in about 9 months to a year. And I remember just waking up one day and this is the point where both my kids are born. We have the house, I have the job, everything is going well. And I'm like, something's still missing. Like something is
Mm.
still missing
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
life. And I ended up calling my therapist that day. And I remember I was in my office right outside of Baltimore, Maryland. And I called him. And And I told him exactly what I just told you. And his immediate question was, I just want to ask, did you feel that every bit of anxiety, depression, every stressor, everything you had in your life would go away because you lost some weight? And I was honest with him. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I thought. Like that. And he's like, no, it unfortunately doesn't work like that.
Right.
Let's get you back in and let's talk about some things.
Mm.
And And so for people listening right now who may have that in the back of their head, like there is research, psychiatric and psychological research people have done on people who have lost weight and their mental health afterwards. And a
Right.
lot of times we actually feel worse about ourselves because we feel like the weight can just come back on like that. We feel
Mm.
like the muscles can go away just like that. Um, and now to answer your question, I work on both daily, like
Got you.
literally daily. And it's not once you get into a rhythm, it's discipline. I don't have to be motivated or inspired to work on either of them anymore. I don't have to,
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't have to see something and say, okay, I like that TED talk. I'm going to meditate today for 15
Right.
minutes. Or I
Right.
saw like no, it's just built into me now because I've done it so much. It's
Hmm.
my default where I know that okay, today I'm going to get a walk, a run, go to the gym, make sure I take care of my physical health,
Yep.
and I'm going to disconnect. And people think like you have to take a lot of time to do
Right.
mental health
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
not just a lot of it is just being present and in the moment and knowing that once you have those thoughts in your mind of okay, if I do this, this is going to happen, this is going to
Right.
happen, this
Hmm.
like slow down.
Hmm.
What's
Hmm.
happening right now in your life? What does the listen to the sound of the birds outside or how the sun
Yes.
feels on you or the buzz that the AC or the lights make, just being present in the moment and really bringing everything inside and just feeling that moment, that and just grounding yourself. That's what most of my days are like. So I take a daily to answer your question. I do both and it's my
Got you.
default mode.
So Mark, I really appreciate the fact that you broke down so that the mental components. I mean, everyone understand like physical activity. You go to the gym, walk, bike, like do some sit ups, some squats, whatever. Like those are easy for people to list off. But if you're not used to doing mental activities or mental mindfulness things of that
Mhm.
nature, they don't come into you. So, disconnecting, fantastic.
Mhm.
Taking a moment to just, I mean, sometimes oftentimes, if I'm driving and I get to a red light, I'll stop and I'll sort of just clear my brain. Problem is, it turns green before I'm finished, and I'm like, I
Right.
get honked from behind. But so I'm working on that piece. But the point that I'm making though is that it can happen anywhere, anytime, in any form, right? Sometimes there's this belief that there's this big grandiose thing where I've got to set aside an hour and have the right clothes on and put out the right gear and the candles going and the set. Like it doesn't have to be that. Sure, it can if it works for you, but those aren't must requirements. So I'm glad you sort of gave some examples of that.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with other, on my show, I've talked to meditation and mindfulness experts about this, and the thing you want to stay away from is using mindfulness to stress yourself out more. And that's what people,
Right.
when people sit down and say, okay, today's the day I'm gonna do meditation, and they'll pick a 35-40 minute meditation. It's like, no, like it's very difficult. Like, you haven't been able to focus for 5 minutes in the past 2 years. Like, what makes you think you're gonna do? And I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but I'm just like
Just
adding
keep it
some
real,
levity.
man. Just
Yeah,
keep it
I'm
real.
adding some levity to it, and I hope people can laugh at it about. But like, literally, what I do is I found myself, whenever I get to a destination, whether it's going away from home or coming home, I like to stay in the car for 3 to 5 minutes
Okay.
before I get out of it. Um, and just kind of look around me, look at look at the things that are surrounding me, and understand like how basic of a place this earth is, but how absolutely phenomenal it is. Like, how literally you look outside and all you see is houses, grass,
Yeah.
sky,
Hmm.
and sun.
Hmm.
But it's like, man, that sun is millions of miles away from us. The grass and the photosynthesis in the sky, like
Sure.
like when you think about it, like it's amazing, like what the construction company had to do to build these
Yeah.
houses,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
city had to do. It's like, man, I'm living in a life full of like beauty and science mixed together, and
Yes.
physics and chemistry and all that stuff. And it's like, once you break it down, what's happened with me is like, I immediately, those sensors go off my brain, and like the oxytocin goes off, and everything just like synapses goes off.
Sure.
And I found myself just having this smile on my face, which I didn't put there. And I'm just looking around, and I feel that my cheeks starting to get a little, I was like, oh, this is, and then I'm ready.
Yeah.
Then I'm ready.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
kind of just shifts me a little bit to get in that better mode.
I mean, as you're speaking, I'm hearing a little bit of gratitude, like in terms of just what
Lots
you
of it.
have.
Lots
Yeah.
of it.
Oh, I'm sorry for minimizing that. Sorry, I said little.
No,
You said lots.
no. But
Yeah. I hear
yeah,
you.
you're absolutely right. However, there is this thing that I do with gratitude. I'm very specific with my gratitude because I don't want it to take away from my actual feelings. Like, there's this thing that if I am in a bad mood, or I'm in my feelings, or I feel like something isn't going the way I want it to go, like a lot of times we do this as humans, where a lot of the initial responses we'll have to someone in a place that is tough, that is stressful, that they don't want
Hmm.
to be, is, hey, well, you should be thankful because X has to go through Y, so you blah blah blah. And it's like, and in my head, I'm like, what does that have to do with me right now? Like, I appreciate the fact
Hmm.
that you want to put things into perspective.
Yep.
And for anyone who's had a mother like mine, oh, kids in Africa are starving, you should. And it's like, okay, I'll eat this. I'll take it. And you feel worse about it. Like, why'd you have to go
Right.
there? Like, why'd you have to go there?
Yeah.
But one thing I've stopped myself from doing is ever invalidating someone's feelings because they should be feeling grateful for what they have.
Yeah.
And it's a tough shift for a lot of people, because in a lot of our heads we think this is minuscule. Like, why is this person worrying about this? This is
Yep. Yep.
outside looking in. Like, this is a molehill. Like, why are they making this a mountain? But
Right.
at the same time, feelings have power, and my words have power. So my first reaction to people who are going through something, or having a feeling, or feel upset, or feel like things didn't go that way, is for me to kind of help them talk through it. It's not for me to invalidate. It's that, why are you feeling that? Like, listen, I didn't have that when I was a kid, so you should be thankful. And it's like,
Right.
no, like
Right.
that is totally a impersonal, invalidating, cold take for me to have when someone is just going through a normal
Yeah.
human emotion.
Right. Right.
So but I do listen. I'm humble and I'm grateful for everything that I have.
Yes.
I, I know that I didn't get this all on my own. Others were involved in it, so I'm very grateful for the relationships I have. But at the same time, I want to make sure other people understand that I'm grateful for them bringing things to me, because the last thing I want is for someone to think if I bring Mark another issue, he's just going to tell me to suck it up and be grateful because he didn't have it or someone else didn't have it. And
Right.
it's like, no, I don't want that to happen.
Right, 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 right. Well, I mean, look, before we press record, we got going expressing gratitude to each of us for being here. We have this conversation,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm with you on that. I do recognize the importance of that, and I think what it does, it frames things nicely. Like when you start to being appreciative and show gratitude toward the things that have been brought to you or given to you. And so I'm with you 100% on that. Tell me why stress isn't our best friend.
Ah, stress isn't it, well, let's talk about bad
Or
stress isn't
or
our
shouldn't
best.
be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about stress. Like we need stress in our lives. Like we need it. It's the reason why, athletes work as hard as they
Okay.
can and
Hmm.
in fourth and one situations since football season. That is
Yes.
the one I'll use because football season just started.
Yep.
Um, that is the reason why a lot of us work as hard as we can because we have deadlines. That's a lot why a lot of us have, the things in our life because of stress that life produces. However, I think it's one of those things where people need to understand in 2024, we don't have the same stressors that we did 10 years, 100 years,
Sure.
thousands of
Sure.
years ago. So we used to only get stressed as a species when, you'd hear something, at night and it's like we have no lights. We have to get stressed because we have to figure out fight, flight, or freeze. That we have to figure those things out. We have to get stressed on, how is the tribe going to eat? We have to, it
Yes.
makes us do
Yes.
things. But it was only available, stress only happened at certain times, and our bodies reacted to it with our cortisol levels and things like that, and adrenaline and how,
Hmm.
pupils and heart rate, all that stuff. What has happened now in the society we live in is that we can go through entire days being stressed the entire day, entire weeks because
Right.
of the
Right.
jobs we have, the responsibilities we have, the anxieties we have on if our kid is going to make a team or go to this college or be
Sure.
accepted into this. Like we stress ourselves all the time. And this is coming from someone who has stressed himself for a lot of the time.
Yes.
Like I'm not just and what happens is our cortisol levels stay spiked. And it's like, okay, this guy's just making up words. Like, no, it's one, my research, and two, all the people I've spoken to,
Yep.
psychologists, doctors, all this stuff.
Hmm.
And what happens is that we stay in this heightened sense of awareness
Hmm.
where everything is fight, flight, or freeze.
Hmm.
And this is leading to levels of stress we haven't seen in a long time, which also forces our bodies to do certain things.
Yeah.
Um, we hold on to weight. We eat. We want, our body craves sugar a lot of time, carbohydrates, things like that, and we don't make our decision making is skewed where we don't use rational thinking.
Hmm.
So because of the content, like stress is good. People need to understand stress is good.
Gotcha.
Like we
Yep.
want we want stress at certain times.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, if you see yourself as stressed all the time, as anxious all the time,
Hmm.
I implore you, please, like find some ways to de-stress yourself, talk to somebody, make sure you're relaxing, make sure you're shutting your brain off. Because if you don't, there are physical consequences. Again, mind body connection. There are
Yes.
physical consequences to the amount of stress that we are keeping ourselves under. And do your own research because don't just take my word for it. Don't
Yep.
listen to this show and be like, okay, Mark is right. I'm going to like do your own research, talk to your primary doctor, talk to your therapist, talk to people who are in the mental health field about
Yes.
what stress does to the
Yes.
body and
Yes.
anxiety does
Yes.
to the body. This is my take, and just to help people make sure they're taking care of their body, and your mind is connected to it, like it's connected to it. So yes, that's why stress is literally killing us.
Mm.
That's not hyperbole. I'm not trying to like
Right.
freak
Right.
people out, but it's just something that people really need to take a look at as a stress in their own life.
What's really interesting is if you go back to the earlier part of our conversation where we talked about so the physical things that we can do for ourselves or the mental activities we can do ourselves, those are great ways to manage stress.
Mhm.
Like they can combat it and minimize it, put it in perspective, help you understand and recognize the importance. So you sort of talked about the significance of stress can help you do all of these things. And so I see the two working, well, three, I guess, but all of them working hand in hand.
They absolutely do, and people need to understand it's 30 minutes a day. Like I'm not
Mm,
talking about like think about if anything in our lives, like if I told you, hey, 30 minutes a day, if you do this thing, you can make an extra $1 million a year. Every
right.
one of us would most likely
Yeah,
do
on that. Yo, sign me up. I'm
it.
there,
Sign
right?
me up. But if I told you, hey, um, 30 minutes, you can improve your mental health by doing something physical, a lot of us won't jump on it immediately. But it's again, once we get that discipline to take care of ourselves, you're absolutely right. We can use physical health to
Yeah.
help us stress relief.
It's interesting. One of the things that, and I found what works for Audley Stephenson. This is my
Mm,
thing, so it's not
mm,
this is what you shall do sort of
mm,
thing, but for everyone else. But I oftentimes find that, so when I pay attention, so we all have things that charge us and get excited, and things that we enjoy doing. It doesn't feel like work. We have the passion for, and I find that if you can stay close to those things, particularly during periods of stress, it's not going to make your stress go away, right? The stress will always be there, but it helps you to manage it better. And so for example, like when I say I enjoy podcasting, I do. And when things get challenging, whatever, I find a way to do more of podcasting. And what it does, it puts me in a a good space where I'm more creative, more energetic, more positive. And so when something happens that I'm not particularly fond of, or I don't like, or I don't appreciate, or whatever, I go to that space. It helps me manage that a bit better. But what it also does, Mark, it helps me get out of that funk that much quicker.
mhm. Absolutely. I cannot tell you how many times I have had a show to record, and I'm like, man, should I cancel it? Should I just not in the right heads? And once that record button goes, or once I meet the person and the pre-show stuff is going on and I'm talking to them and I'm like,
Let's go.
this person is so grateful that I invited them on the show. Like they want to have this and everything kind of like my posture starts. I
Yeah,
start
yeah,
getting
yeah.
right.
His
And it's
chest gets
like,
bigger.
hey,
Yeah, yeah. Let's
all
go.
right. Hey, thanks for like, and it's like,
Yeah,
that's the thing I'm talking about. But people have to go through that. They have to
sure.
experience that before that becomes a part of their life. If someone is caught in a funk and their go-to is just binge watch TV and eat ice cream, their brain starts to get used to that.
Yeah,
Okay, Mark, you're in a bad mood. Okay, put on Netflix and eat do that. But the moment you switch it up and you put the ice cream away, turn off the TV, and go in the sunshine, and like the vitamin D and all that stuff hits your body, and
yep.
you're like, your body starts to readjust. The body is an amazing thing.
Mhm.
With it, they say it takes 6 weeks to actually create a habit,
Yep,
but I'm telling you right now, you can do it earlier than that. And again, I'm not telling people because I'm a doctor or anything like that, but I'm saying I've noticed in 2 weeks what my body has done. I've changed eating
gotcha.
habits. I've
Yes,
changed the
yes,
thought process. I've done things in 2 weeks
yes.
but I've had to be intentional. I've had to be intentional about it. I had to do it with purpose. I can't just do something and hope this works out.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't, we aren't built like that, unfortunately.
the other piece that really helps you, so if you're working towards a goal, is having those little check points or milestones, because they'll do wonders in terms of your motivation, right? Like, come on, wait, like if like you think if someone's going on a weight loss journey, right,
Mm.
and they get to a certain point and they're at their goal weight that they want. Come on, how motivating is that? That's going to put you over the edge. You want to keep going and keep going, and so it's constantly feeding itself by doing so. And so that'd be another thing that I threw out there.
One of the best things with that, though, is to make sure if you are trying to reach a goal and you have a setback,
Yep.
like you learn from that setback and
Sure.
you give yourself grace.
Yep.
Like you don't throw it away because you had one donut.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
throw away because you missed one therapy session, or you're like, oh, well, I
How
totally
about
forgot
two
to wake up
donuts?
early.
Is two donuts? Two, is that,
Two
is that
donuts is fine. Two donuts is fine. Two
okay?
donuts is
Okay.
fine.
Cool. Cool.
Or if you like wake up late and you're like, oh,
Sure.
I didn't get my meditation and I have to go to work now. Like life happens. Like I apologize. Like I'm sorry to the people who think they're supposed to be perfect because I was one of those people. Sorry, you're not going to be
Eh,
perfect. And it's not attainable. So
Gotcha.
why start reaching for things that are not like I I can bench a certain amount, or I can run a
Yep.
certain distance, or I can, coach this team, or I can win this award at work. There's things I can physically do.
Yep.
I cannot be perfect. I
Right.
cannot be perfect.
Yep. 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 I'm with you. I'm with you. And I don't, and it's not a goal of mine either. I'm not even sure what that looks like. But I do, the underlying point is about giving us grace, which is a big one. And so,
Mm,
thank you for making that point. Thank you
mm.
for raising that point as well. As a podcaster, I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to touch on the podcasting work that you do. And first and foremost, I got to give you a lot of props and shout out. You got two podcasts. Like that's like that is a level of commitment and dedication that I got to show respect to that, because I know how hard one podcast is, and so to have two of them, that's a big deal, my friend. Talk about the 6 a.m. podcast, and then you got the relatively normal podcast.
Yeah, so well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it does get a little much sometimes, but like I said, it really gives me energy. And 6 a.m. Run podcast is actually created by Hami Mahani, who is the co-founder and CEO of 6 a.m. Run. And he, small business, minority business owner, and he wanted to get his show out there. And he started this podcast, and he knew I had a podcast, and he found out how much work podcasts can be. And
Yeah.
he's trying to run a business and like own a company, things like that. So he reached out to me over a year ago and said, Mark, I know what you're doing. I see how you interview guests and things like that. Do you mind taking over the podcast? And I was like,
Wow.
absolutely. Let's get on this. Let's do it. And I kind of changed some things up, took it as my own, and he is getting more involved now. So if you listen to 6 a.m. Run podcast now, he is getting more involved in it. He took a break from it, but now he's in a spot where he wants to be involved in it again, which is great. I love talking to Hami.
Yeah.
Relatively, and that's the physical fit. It's more of a lifestyle show, so it's not just about running. Please don't see run in the title. We
I
have
gotta go.
fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
We have of course fitness professionals, we have
Sure.
mental health coaches, we have financial planners, we have public speakers, we have people. I want people to get something out of the show on their run. Relatively normal was my way of kind of putting myself out there, and it was another mental health outlet for me. And I had a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with my therapist a long time ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and it was one of those days where it's like it is today, sunny, nice, it's a great day,
Yep.
and I just felt like the rain cloud was on me. I felt like the rain
Mm.
cloud was on me, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I want to." Be normal, like the person outside who's smiling and joking and enjoying life. Like I want to be normal like them. And he said, one, you don't know what they're going through. Like you don't know
Great
them. You
point.
don't go there. Yeah. And
Great point.
two, like this is your normal. Like normal is relative. Like
Yeah.
you have different stressors and we have to work on your coping mechanisms. And from that moment, like relatively normal stuck in my head. And from that, I was like, I want to create a space where people can hear me talk and just understand that they're not alone. And I want to know that I'm not alone. And I do want to create a space where men feel comfortable sharing their emotions and their
Yes.
feelings without
Yeah.
being, you know, struck away as outcasts or, dude, what are you doing? Like, we don't
Something's wrong
talk
with
about
you.
that.
Yeah.
Something's
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah,
Right.
come on.
Right. Right.
That's what women do, man. It's like, listen, I'm gonna stand up as the biggest guy in the room and say, I don't know the answer. I need
There's nothing wrong
help.
with that.
I can't do this by myself. I don't feel strong today. I don't have the energy. I need someone to take this burden from me. I'm going to stand up and yell all that stuff because I want other men to feel comfortable doing that.
I love the vulnerable language because you got to be vulnerable to say that you don't have all the answers, or say you
Mhm.
don't know, or say that you're afraid. Like, I mean, there's so much to this that is so important, and so be able to do that in a manner that that shows. I was saying the word courage because I think courage is a good word.
Mm,
Um, uh, Bravery, another good word to step up
mm,
and say you don't know something, or you're scared about something. I love the way that you take ownership and responsibilities for your feelings, your emotions, what you're going through in a moment. And so, kudos to you. For listeners that wanted to connect with you directly, Mark, or hook up with your podcast, or I mean, yeah, the all coaching work that you do. Well, good luck catching up with you. One, I think, because you're all over the place. But if they were to try to, what would you said though?
I just listen, I'm on all the socials, but I send people to markpaisant.com. That is just my website, and you can get to all the socials and the podcast from there. I know I've been on these shows where it's like you can get me here on IG and here on TikTok and here on this and here on that, which I have all that. But
Sure.
I want to make it really simple. markpaisant.com. Also, I like to put this out there too. If
Hmm.
I LinkedIn is I love LinkedIn. I do a lot of positive posts on LinkedIn. If you reach out to me, if someone's listening, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn or my website or my IG, wherever, like I will conversate with you. I will talk to you. If you are a man or someone who's like, listen,
Right.
I've just been a rut. I don't think I have anybody to talk to. Reach out to me. Like, I respond and I love having these conversations. Even if you have never had that conversation and you don't know how it goes, tell me, Mark, I don't know how this conversation goes.
Yep.
And you know what you've just done? You've just started a conversation.
Got
So
it.
let's do it.
You got it. I love it. I love the commitment to want to help others, and again, all the work that you've done and all the work you're doing is fantastic. Mark, thank you for spending time here on the Audacious Living podcast. Like I said, this conversation is so aligned with what we're trying to do here on this podcast, because it's showing individuals where the things that the pieces, the necessary pieces that we need to have in place to live that best audacious life that we talk about. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work, my friend.
Audley, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up.
For real. Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Mark for being here. In our chat with him, we delved into the impact of stress on our overall well-being and the significance of finding ways to de-stress and maintain a healthy mindset. He shared valuable tips on how to prioritize self-care and emphasize the importance of taking care of both mental and physical health. Listeners are certainly encouraged to connect with Mark directly via the contact details that we've listed in the show notes below. Additionally, I'd encourage you not to miss out on the great insights that Mark offers through his own podcast, and he's talked a little about that as well. So certainly encourage listeners to connect with him in those fashions. As we wrap up this episode, we invite you, as always, to like, follow, subscribe, and share to the Audacious Living podcast to help continue to grow and inspire others to reach audacious lives. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, your well-being is absolutely priority, and you definitely come first. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stephenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.